Hi everyone, welcome to another Table Talk. So today I just wanted to briefly share with you kind of a lesson that I learned out at the field today when I was flying my modified RC Powers F-18 version 3. Again, as often happens, most of my buffoonery or mishaps are caused by my own lack of attention to detail at times. So anyway, what essentially happened was when I built the file for my F-18 version 3 and my Turnigy 9X, I'd essentially just copied another airplane and then fixed up a few things. But unfortunately, I guess in my haste, I didn't go all the way through, and I'd actually left in mixes for flaperons, which I hadn't actually intended on using with the F-18 version 3. And I had it. I normally have always had, like, if I set up a plane and I have flaperons or spoilerons, I normally have it on this switch. And when I fly, I sort of fly with a modified pinch setup, sort of like this. With this is essentially exactly how my fingers are on the front of my transmitter. So anyway, I launched my plane left-handed, and it was a bit of a funky chicken launch. And in my excitement, when I went to grab my transmitter again with my left hand, I brushed this switch, and I didn't really know it at first because my heart was pounding. So as I'm flying along, now all of a sudden my plane, the nose is pitching down, and it's not exactly something I wanted to see, on the fifth or sixth flight of my flight session. So anyway, I brought it, and first thing I'm thinking is, oh, the battery slipped, or my speed controller has slid all the way forward, or something like that. So I brought it in and landed, and then I look and I see that my ailerons are down. So I look, and sure enough, this switch was activated. So anyway, the gist of this is, I guess I don't use a lot of switches on my transmitter. I'm not. I don't fly with dual rates where I might have a more gentle setup in one switch position, and then when I want to get into doing some aerobatics or whatever, I flip a switch, and then I have increased rates or maybe different expo. I tend to just keep it the same because I did almost crash a plane with my transmitter previous to this one. It was a Spectrum DX6i, and I took off. Actually, it was with an F-18 as well, and I had, again, I was excited to fly, and I had a switch, my aileron switch had flipped. So in one position I had, I think 70% throws, let's say, and 40% expo, and in the other position I had 100% throws and 0 expo. So the first time I went into a turn, the thing was over on its back before I realized what happened. So anyway, that's one of the main reasons that I don't play around with with high and low rates of control surface travel. But I have the main switches that I do use are on this transmitter. When I start my timer, because I launch my plane with my left hand, sort of as soon as it leaves my hand, I automatically flip that switch up. And because of the way I hold my transmitter, I'm not ever, touch wood, I haven't ever touched that. And then when it does go off, the countdown timer does start to go off, I can just kind of flip it with my finger and then bring the plane in and land. The other main switch I use is, this is my throttle kill switch. So in the up position, my motor is active, and when in the down position, I can move the throttle and the motor won't turn. So again, that's another switch that I fortunately, touch wood, I've never touched, because the last thing I want to do is, if I'm flying along, is do that and then I've killed my motor. So in future, I'll probably look at maybe a different. That's the first time that's ever happened to me today. So in the future, I'll look at maybe a different one. On my FlySky here, I only essentially use 2 switches. This is my timer switch, because there's no switches up on the top here, and this would be my throttle kill switch over here. So very similar setup. Although if I have done a lot of flying with this one, I do have to be careful that I don't flip when I transition back to this transmitter, that I flip this switch, because this one's dead. But I might go to another switch for flaperons and spoilerons. So I guess my point here is, you know, it might be one of those things if you're setting up an intermediate or advanced setup where, you know, I don't know, you want flaps or spoilerons, or you want to have a setup where you, you know, you take off elevons only and then, you know, flip a switch and then you have all your other controls. Depending on how you hold your transmitter and hand launch your plane, it might be something to consider as where you put those switch selections so that you don't, you know, by mistake do like I did today, because that was probably, it was the first time that it's happened, but maybe this is a bad switch to use for that particular function, whereas maybe in the future, if I wanted ailerons or flaperons, I would use this switch over here. But anyway, that could take a long time for me to get used to because I'm not used to that switch. But anyway, so yeah, so one of those things, lessons learned, just thought I would sort of pass along. This transmitter also, it's flashed with ER9X, which is the kind of the predecessor to OpenTX. So you can actually program it so that the switch, you know, normally if, you know, if it up is on and down is off, you can actually reverse it so that down is on and up is off, you know, kind of thing. So those might be things to think about when, you know, when you're looking at, you know, how you normally handle your transmitter, how you launch, you know, little traps that you might fall into if you bump the wrong switch while you're flying, you know, depending on what sort of intermediate to advanced setup you have, or you know where you might put your motor kill switch. I mean, the last thing you want to do probably is when you're flying around is bump your motor kill switch if you use one, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're hammering away at your throttle and nothing's happening as you watch your plane you know, glide gracefully into the dirt. Yeah, so things to think about there. Lesson learned. Luckily, as often happens, I guess I must have I must have some money in the RC God's bank, because I was able to bring the plane in and then kind of figure out what it is. But it could have been one of those situations where, you know, I could have been flailing around for quite a while and got myself into you know, run out of airspace, altitude, and ideas, and it could have ended badly. So anyway, I just wanted to pass that along. You know, something to think about maybe. I know it's probably fairly minor, but you know, it could be one of those minor things that turns into something very major at the field, depending on how you have your switches set up on your transmitter. And again, the other thing I learned is, you know, and I will make sure the next time is if I copy a file from one plane and rename it, to make sure that I go through every menu item with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that if I didn't want flaperons or spoilerons or any other kind of special mix, that I delete that out until I'm ready to experiment with it. So yeah, another didn't practice what I preached there, and it almost bit me. But yeah, so there we go, folks. Thanks as always for watching. Thanks as always from the bottom of my heart for your support to my channel. It's much appreciated, and keeps me motivated to keep doing these videos and sharing my lessons learned. Blue skies, calm winds, everyone. Park jet noise, the other sound of freedom, baby. Take care.